This morning I'm going to split it really. I'm going to give you a presentation about the work that we've been doing at Birmingham City University, which I think really has transformed some of our communications, and Sharon gave you a bit of a sneak preview in the panel session earlier. And then what I'd like to do, if we've got a bit of time, is to actually turn the floor over to you and get you doing a group exercise, because I always find that actually it's the talking to other people and hearing what other people are doing and their ideas that kind of make the difference at these conferences, and I really like to come away with a long list of to-dos and ideas, so that's hopefully what I'll be able to do today. What I thought I'd do first of all is just give you a bit of context. As Emma said, I work at Birmingham City University. I've been there since April 2008. And actually, since around October 2007, when the university became Birmingham City University from University of Central England, it's been on a bit of a phenomenal trajectory, really. The new Vice-Chancellor was appointed in October. I came in the April, and things have really moved forward. The Times Higher commented in 2010 that we were one of the top 10 upwardly mobile universities, and that was really as a result of the dramatic rise in UCAS applications. We had the highest rise in UCAS applications in 2009 and won the Times Higher Education Leadership and Management Award for Outstanding Recruitment Campaign that year. So lots of brownie points for me in my new role. We are one of the largest universities in the UK, over 25,000 students, and very much what I'd class as a modern urban university. It's a very much a city centre experience, which is very different from Northampton, where I'd been previously. We started looking at our inquiry management in 2010 and really conducted a review of what was taking place, more so to produce the evidence of what we already knew. So we kind of involved consultation with all areas of the university. We did some surveys and focus groups with prospective students. And basically the bottom line was there was absolutely no consistency in inquiry handling. I'm sure some of you will have had similar experiences, but all our faculties were determined that they needed to put their own phone numbers and emails on marketing communications. So consequently you had effectively at least 7 points of entry into the university, one through the marketing department's inquiry unit and then through each of the 6 academic faculties. And we, through the central unit, we were getting about 18,000 inquiries, and I knew from working elsewhere in the sector of similar sized universities that actually we should be having nearer kind of 50, 60,000. And when we actually looked into kind of doing a bit more scientific research, we found that at least half of the inquiries weren't being logged. We were also, one of the reasons why we pushed towards this was, I'm sure most of you will have been in the same position I've been in the last 3 years, where budgets are being squeezed because the government funding was being reduced. We've actually been kind of on a 5% year-on-year cut. So we were looking at ways to save money, and we knew that one of the ways of doing that would be to shift from more print-based communications to electronic. But we couldn't really do that if we didn't have any electronic data to begin with. So there was a whole kind of series of things that were building up that we needed momentum. We're also very aware that our nurturing post-inquiry was really weak. We had we'd send invitations to open days, of course, and we had an ad hoc applicant magazine, which truly was ad hoc. There was no schedule for when it went out, and it went out roughly twice a year, and that was it, I'm ashamed to say. Obviously, if you then look at what was going on in the kind of wider sector, we knew obviously that higher fees were coming in 2012 and had rightly anticipated that that was going to mean a smaller pool of students to choose from, which has obviously come about, although actually it's probably not as bad as some of us had anticipated it might be. We were also aware very much of what our competitors were doing. Obviously, Birmingham is right on our doorstep, and they have very sophisticated CRM systems in place. And I think sort of 10 years ago, perhaps more than 10 years ago, I'd gone up to see UCLan on a fact-finding visit, who were, one of the early adopters of the Hobsons system. So we were way behind. I think when we sort of started looking at Hobsons, 40 other UK universities were using it. So we knew we had a lot of ground to kind of gain, really. So, the solution. And this is where I think we did things possibly a bit different. I mean, one of the kind of internal pressures we were facing, ultimately we knew we needed to get a CRM system. I think there was no doubt in anyone's mind. But there was a lot of resistance internally to purchasing yet another external system. Why can't we just have one system that does everything? We actually have the SIT student record system, and there was a lot of resistance from the academic registry team about trying to use SITs for the kind of nurturing activities. So one of the things that we did straight away was we set up a cross-functional group to go through the process following the review. We actually have in the university, we have what's called the business process group, which is a directorate-led group, and it then kind of oversees various of the operations, reviews and changes that are happening. So my group, the inquiry review group, fed into that, and it involved representation from faculties, obviously marketing, CICT, academic registry. And so collectively, we kind of came up with the specification for what we wanted to achieve, what we wanted to do, and that would then drive the system that we bought. And it worked really well. I think the first thing to say straight away is that, having said that we came from a very low starting point, we actually kind of went from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 60 seconds. We didn't go for kind of a halfway house. We decided we wanted the best, and we went for the best. And I think you need to bear that in mind in some of the comments that I'll make when I talk about lessons learned later on. So we decided, we already knew that we desperately needed to log and track prospective students and our inquiries. One of the things process-wise that we did to coincide with this activity, which had come out as a recommendation of the group, was we centralised our inquiries through the marketing department. It was previously called Choices because it was kind of an advice unit, and we now call it the centralised inquiries unit. So all of our literature and all of the website point to that unit, with 2 exceptions. And as is always the case, nothing is ever straightforward. Our particular university has 2 very specialist schools, which at one point were independent. We have the Birmingham Conservatoire and we have Birmingham School of Acting. And they really operate in a very different competitor set to universities. They're up against conservatoires, acting schools. They have different application cycles. And actually we recognised that we needed to find a solution that worked for them. They very much need their own sub-branding, because actually in some instances it's not good for them to be associated with the university, so they need their strong identity, and they also needed to handle their own inquiries. So that kind of complicated what we were after. But we also decided early on that we wanted to nurture our applicants as well, which meant that we were going to have to upload applicant data from the student record system. And one of the problems that we'd always had is the lack of data meant that we could never track conversion from inquiry to applicant, from applicant to student. So right at the outset, that was one of the goals that we had. We wanted this lifetime conversion cycle. So not only did we need to be able to upload applicants, but what we've subsequently agreed is that once a year we will upload the enrolled student data, so we get that snapshot of the full lifetime conversion. We also then needed to come up with a communications plan for both inquiries and applicants. And then we also had decided that we wanted to manage our open days. We've, over the last 3 years, we've developed quite our own in-house sophisticated systems. We use barcode scanners. It's worked really well in terms of the feedback we get, because people register really quickly. They have all the information up front. What we hoped from the Hobsons systems, and we're currently implementing that at the moment, is the advantage would be that we would have much more trackable data, and what we would be able to do is see things like how many people are booked on up front, which our current systems didn't really do. They were great for the actual process, but not so good for the reporting. We did throughout the process do some fact finding. We went to see Birkbeck University. They've developed their own bespoke system. And I think some of you who've been on the conference circuit will have seen them presenting about the fact that they've created a very cheap and cost-effective solution. It works very well for them, but I think was really too basic for the needs that we had. The flip side to that was we went to visit the University of Sunderland, and thank God I took a dean with me, the dean of our business school, because we were absolutely blown away. They were using Hobsons, and they were doing campaign marketing through the Hobsons system. The tracking and the reporting data they had was phenomenal. They weren't uploading applicant data at that time. But one of the things that I was really intrigued with was that they were using the VIP portal, and once those inquiries had become students, they were still communicating with them through the Hobson system. Now, I'm sure any of you have worked in the sector for a while will know it is impossible to communicate with students. So whenever I hear a channel for communicating to students, my ears prick up and I'm like, that sounds good to me. So we went out and we invited 7 companies to tender, one of which was Tribal, who run SITs, and Hobsons won that process. And I think one of the reasons we chose Hobsons was because they offered the functionality that we wanted in the broadest sense. They were actually cost effective in terms of some of the prices of the larger commercialised solutions, and also simply the track record in the sector. There was no one that was demonstrating the level of reach that Hobsons had, and particularly people that were uploading applicant data as well, which is obviously what we were interested in. We implemented very quickly, and Emma has probably had to dye her hair because she went grey throughout the process. By the time we'd gone through negotiations and sorted the contract out, it was July, and we went live in November with our inquiries. Now, 4 months, believe me, probably doesn't sound that quick a period, but it was for the way we implemented. We decided to kind of phase the approach because the work that we wanted to do was just phenomenal, really, when you were looking at all the different filters and fields. So we focused primarily on inquiries, because obviously that was my big concern, is that I wanted to be nurturing inquiries as soon as possible, with the on-time deadline in December, and obviously the implications for September 2012. And then we decided we'd bring applicants on board next, and then we'd launch events, the events management system. We actually brought applicants live this month, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We have a BCYou VIP portal, and I think it was Emma that came up with BCYou, wasn't it? And I nicked it, I think.
I can't take Tammy.
Oh, was it Tammy? Yeah. So we have what we call the corporate BCYou site, and then we actually developed bespoke VIP portals for Birmingham Conservatoire and the Birmingham School of Acting as well. Just to show you the next one. At Go Live, and I was really pleased with this, we had over 60 pieces of automated content at Go Live, and that's largely because, of course, we were having to tailor it for the 3 different kind of versions as well. And as Sharon was saying, one of the things that I've been really proud of, which I think is possibly different to other people in the sector, is that we have gone down the approach of these tailored subject newsletters. The reason why we did that is once people have made, all the evidence shows is that once people have made the inquiry, their interest becomes at a subject and course level. And so we really wanted to start targeting it at that kind of lower level. So the monthly subject newsletters, an example there, they'll have a top level corporate story, they'll then have a faculty level story, and then they'll have stories from the individual school as well. We've got a whole kind of communications plan, so it has all the usual things like, thank you for your inquiry. It has prompts at various points of the year for application, which is obviously different for the conservatoire, but those are all automatically timed in. We also have the nurturing as well, in terms of things like tips on advice, on revision. We've got a whole load to go out about clearing. We've just sent one out about, reasons to choose BCYou. Obviously now's the time that people are considering whether to make us first choice, so we put a really nice email with sort of the top 10 reasons why to choose us. And one of the things that's been really useful actually is, and this has to stay within these 4 walls, having been trying people to sell me onto the SIT system for CRM, we've actually had quite a lot of problems with the SIT system for its basic student record and admissions handling. Obviously this is, I think part of it has been because the university centralised its admissions when was it, probably about September, October, and as I'm sure you'll appreciate, not all the faculties wanted to release their staff, so they've had issues in terms of resource, but equally we've had issues in terms of SITs where some horror stories where invites to applicant visit days haven't gone out, offers haven't gone out when they should have, and so we knew that there were some people, some applicants who hadn't heard from us within a reasonable period. We had no means of identifying them in the SIT system, so one of the things that we did last week was send in a message out to our applicants in view of the fact that we were launching that with the applicants' newsletters and all the rest of it, sort of quite positively saying about how, building on from our 3-year highest rise of UCAS applications, we've still got lots of applications, we're processing them, we like to give each one, due care and attention and time, so, if we haven't got back to you yet, it might take a little bit of extra time, but don't worry, you'll hear from us soon, and if you've got any concerns, contact admissions. We wouldn't have had that vehicle if we hadn't gone if we hadn't implemented Connect. And actually, you know, I know from conversations that I had from the Vice-Chancellor, we were really worried about what impact, you know, the delays in getting back to applicants would have. So to be honest, it's been a bit of a lifesaver already. Just a few results for you really, and then I think some of the nitty-gritty I want to get into is some of the lessons learned. In the first month, we had almost 2,000 inquiries registered, which is absolutely fantastic. I would say as well, one of the things that we did, which when we set up the system, it has various ways of kind of inputting data. Obviously, we have self-registration from users who are going onto the website and they could fill in all the details. We also have manual input, so my team in the Centralised Inquiries Unit, the admissions teams in Birmingham Conservatoire and Birmingham School of Acting can upload direct in the system. But we can also export data, which obviously we've never been able to do before. So in December, we had the UCAS Design Your Future Fairs, and we had over 700 prospective students came to the, I think it's a 2-day event. We were able to upload those prospective student details into the Connect system, and they got the first of our art and design subject newsletters before the on-time deadline, which was a real achievement for us. As you can see from the stats up there, I think Hobsons sort of estimate that if you're sending out to more than 1,000 people, the typical click-through rate is about 12.5%. That first newsletter had 25% within the first 24 hours and went on to get kind of 29% when all was said and done. Since then, one of the things that worked really well was we developed an interactive Christmas card. It was actually designed by some of our graduates, and basically, I don't know if anyone saw it, but when you clicked onto it, all the little icons for the baubles, a story would pop up, and it was kind of some of our greatest achievements over the past 12 months. So I think the music note at the top was Jessie J came and launched our equivalent of the Brit School, which is Birmingham Orchestra Academy. So it was some really nice stories, but a very visual way of doing it, and that actually had a 36% click-through rate. At the same period, we launched a survey, which is now on the site permanently, to gain feedback and get people's views. And you see there, 3/4 said that the content that they'd seen had positively influenced their opinion and that they were likely to apply, which I think those stats, you know, are pretty impressive. And I would have to say that I think one of the benefits of the Hobson system is that you now have a pool of prospective students and applicants that you can survey quite easily. It's very simple to set up a survey. So one of the issues that we've got at the moment, which I'm sure you'll have the same, is last year we saw a bigger increase in applications for our accommodation. And I think, like a lot of universities, we've been actually downsizing our campus accommodation and moving towards deals with private providers. Because previously, and certainly my experience in the sector had been that people were choosing to use private accommodation or stay at home. We saw a massive rise last year, which led to some problems. So one of the things that we want to do now is actually survey some of those prospective students to get a sense of, you know, what are you hoping to do if you get a place with accommodation? Are you looking for halls of residence? So we can get a better feel of how we can cope with that. In the first sort of 3 months, we've probably now had about I think that was done in, the figure was sort of end of January, we've probably had about 4,000 inquiries now, and I would say half of those are kind of active and engaging. What we have done, what's been really useful, is that actually, because you can see behind the data, you can see what people are clicking on and what content is most interesting to them. So there you can see that it was kind of making your application, virtual tour, accommodation, and campuses were the most popular. We have tweaked some of the content as well to take this into account. So, for example, we'd originally had a Did You Know feature, which actually features on our website as well, and it's basically where we put loads of different facts on. Just wasn't being looked at, so we've moved that. We also, because of all the interest in generally in kind of the student union and what happens on that side of things in terms of social life and experience, we've put up a lot of content about the student union game, just wasn't being looked at. So we've kind of removed it and just put a straightforward link so we can concentrate on other things. So it gives you really good market intelligence, and that can influence the rest of your comms strategy as well. What I'm going to do now, which I think is probably the most useful information, because and it has been phenomenally positive and we're delighted with it, but what I thought I'd do is share some of the lessons that we've learned going through it, because it has been a resource-intensive task for us. As I say, probably because we went for quite a high level of specification. I think you need to kind of bear in mind that whatever systems you're getting, you're going to have to put the resource into not only developing and launching those systems, but maintaining them. I mean, as you can see there, and Sharon mentioned it, we've got 18 monthly subject newsletters going out, all with new content. And what we try and do is we don't just recycle content from website or press releases. The aim is to give them something new. So you've got to find all that new content, pull it together and get someone to write it. Well, we're very fortunate that we've got a copywriter, but we only have one. So what we've done is we've set up an editorial board that has marketing officers, the web team, the press office, education liaison, and they kind of collectively talk about the stories. They'll come to me and say, what do you think is the big story for the university? So it's really a collaborative effort, and that has worked really well. I think the other thing that we did straight away, and this was based on feedback that we'd had from other universities, is we actually appointed an external project manager to come in and literally take us through the implementation. She was a colleague of mine from Northampton, Nikki Daniels, and basically, I don't think we could have done it without her. She kept things on track. She was managing all the deadlines, all the actions, taking all the meeting notes. Obviously, Hobsons were doing some of that activity as well, but it really kind of focused us on what we need to do and how we needed to kind of prepare for meetings and the next stages of implementation as well. I think the other thing that I would say as well is that you have got to have buy-in from some of the interested stakeholders, and the two biggest will be CICT, because if you want to upload applicant data, they've got to write the script to do it from your student record system to upload into the Connect system. And if admissions isn't part of your department, which it isn't for me, you need the buy-in of academic registry. We were very fortunate, after a very painful process up front, by the time we got to writing that specification where they actually in black and white admitted that SIT wasn't going to do it, they actually became quite cooperative. And what we've since done is we actually had them build a field in the SIT system. And that was, I mean, Matt down at the front here has been working on the project with me, and I think that was like the moment in history when we got the SIT scene to put a new field into the student record system. And that helped us kind of match the data up when we were uploading and things. I think the other point that I'd make is, you'll have seen from Sharon earlier, we have a very competent and technical member of staff in our web marketing manager. We also had Matt, who was our project manager from CICT, and Shona McQuillan, who is my inquiries manager, has lots of experience with databases. That helped us in terms of the sophisticated level that we wanted to work at. Lots of thought needs to go into the filters and the fields that you want to set up, how you want the system to work. If you're developing, inquiry forms, either directly on the website or something that you might be using externally via, a giveaway at a UCAS fair or whatever, you've got to be aware that your information has to marry up with the database that you set up. There's a lots of work in doing in terms of when you want to get into tailoring information, is setting up the filters. Now, the filters are quite straightforward, but I think you need someone who's of a specific mindset. I mean, I when I did the training, I was able to do it, but if you ask me now, I probably wouldn't be able to do it. And we were very lucky in that we had people that were able to do it, so just kind of bear that in mind. I think the other thing that we were shocked by, but I know that Hobsons has since reviewed this, and more face-to-face contact is going to happen, is that when we launched this back in July, the implementation was largely done by telephone contact. And that was, I think, that's probably more accepted in some of the commercial sectors. For us as in HE, it was quite a shock to the system, I have to say. Plus points were that Hobsons has a raft of online material and presentations and seminars that you can kind of prepare for these meetings. So there's really no excuse not to go in with the knowledge that you need. I think it was more just a cultural thing where we're used to kind of talking to people face to face, and you have some of those difficulties where there's a bit of a delay or people start speaking over it. So we have kind of smiled at each other in meetings at times. We're used to it now, but I think it was just one thing that I thought I would mention. The other thing that, again, I know Hobsons has changed now, so they tend to do, I think it's 2 to 3 days implementation training. When we did it, it was 5 days. it was quite difficult to get 3 people's diaries up for 5 days. And I think the advice that I give you is that probably not everyone actually has to be there for the 5 days. So it's more about just really firming up the agenda and who you need for specific days. So we had people kind of dipping in and out. What I would say is the training was absolutely fantastic. It really brought everything together. It made us realise how it could work, how the system could work, what we need to do, what the priorities were. So, you know, it was really useful from that perspective. The other thing that, as I mentioned earlier, because there were a number of sort of elements to the implementation, we decided to phase it. That has pros and cons. If I kind of went back to July, I'd probably do it the same way now, but having said that, having spoken to the team, when we came to set up the filters for uploading applicant data, there was a lot of work back end that had to be redone because we'd set the system up for inquiries in a specific way. And so Sharon was sort of saying, oh, well, if I thought about it then, I might have done it a bit differently. But I think it would have been just too much to kind of consider all in one go. So that's where we are now. As I say, we've uploaded applicants. December will be the first time we upload our student data, so it's really kind of watch this space, and I'll let you know next year how it goes. But so far, we're very positive about it. In terms of the next steps, people who have come across me before know that I like to kind of do things that are a bit different. So at Wolverhampton, this is going a long way back now, we did the first ever loyalty club for prospective students, which was called Future Club, and it won lots of awards. At Northampton, we did a Student Essentials Filofax, which cost a hell of a lot of money, but were great, got loads of perception. Well, I'm delighted to say that I've now signed up to be a foundation partner for Hobsons to do 2 personalised videos, and I know that it was mentioned in the earlier plenary session. I've put the web addresses there because if you haven't come across them, you really should. They are fantastic. And it's really, what I see, the pros that I see really is it just takes it to another dimension. And I think when I first heard about the personalised videos, and the University of Oregon one in particular is very wacky. It's basically, you're a duck. You're dressed in this character of a duck, and it takes you through, and it's all, you know, welcome Catherine, and there's all different things. And when you first see it, you think, oh my goodness. But actually there's a soft side to it that you can't help but like. So I think that our initial views were, oh, you know, in Great Britain, you couldn't do anything like that. It's, you know, too dumbing down. You know, we need to be much more serious. I'm actually now changing my mind a bit on that one, and we do have a tiger costume, so who knows? But anyway, the one that I was really particularly impressed with was with the Adler School of Psychology. And if you get a chance, do go and have a look at that. And this is something that I'm really keen to do. The first 2 videos that we're doing will be a general kind of corporate introduction to BCYou, obviously putting them in the position of, you know, welcome Catherine, you've made the right decision, blah, blah, blah. We also want to do a nice birthday message, which allows us to be a bit more fun. It might be illustrated rather than straight video. But what my long-term goal is to have 18 subject videos. I haven't quite worked out how I'm going to afford them yet. But the School of Psychology one there, what I really liked about it was it talked about a specific field. So it was saying things like, you know, well, there you can see the letter from the, you know, thank you for helping me, Catherine. There was things like, you know, Catherine, do you want to make a difference in the world? You know, social work can make that difference. And I really liked the way it really was hard-hitting and had impact. And so that is my kind of long-term goal. So I hope you found that useful. I'm going to try and finish up now, but obviously give you some time for questions because I do want you to do a bit of an exercise. So has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask?
I'm sorry, this is actually quite a technical question, but when you were building the subject newsletters, because we also have faculty-specific newsletters, did you do that through using content blocks, or did you actually create 18 separate newsletters? Emma may be able to be the one who can actually answer that question.
Do you know, Matt?
18 separate.
It's 18
separate
ones.
separate.
Yeah, it's 18 separate.
So it's not you're not using the filtering to create content blocks.
No.
If you were taking the data from SITs for prospects, for applicants and current students, did that include prospects, or were you driving prospects through Hobsons?
Yeah, prospects come through our inquiries online and stuff anyway, and go directly into Connect. It's literally just the applicants from SITs, and we have pending, reject, which obviously we don't use, and we have accepted. The complication, which is why it took us a bit longer in terms of filters, is because people obviously apply for one or more subjects, so you've got to take that into account, and when you're filtering on things like subjects, so it was complex. We had a lot of anxiety in registry about the fact that, well, what if the data changes in the meantime and you send something to someone who's since been rejected? Well, what we do is, I think the UCAS data comes in at something like 6:30. We download now daily to connect at something like 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and the communications will go out at 8:30. So nothing can have happened in the meantime to change the status of an applicant, and it gets updated on a daily basis. Yeah.
Did this campaign, this process involve just home students, or did it include international students as well?
Well, that's an interesting question. It involves primarily home students. My responsibility is for the UK recruitment, and we have a separate international office that deals with international recruitment. They actually use the Hobsons Inquiry Management Service, which is very different. The only discrepancy is Birmingham School of Acting and Birmingham Conservatoire sit outside that, so they manage their own international inquiries, and that had to be taken into account when we were setting up our system, so those are handled within it. At the back?
You mentioned about the fact you use barcode readers for your open data process. Do you still use those in relation to integrating it with the system?
We're not. No, we looked at whether we could do it and the difficulties. One of the reasons why we moved away from it was actually an academic in our university who developed a barcode system, which I think he goes out and sells to other universities now. And we were going to have to buy all our own barcoding equipment. So what we're doing now is we're basically, I think it's a tear off, or it's a separate card that they bring that we send out. But I mean, effectively it will still work the same, just without the barcode scanners.
It's interesting, you said that the barcode system worked for you quite well in terms of the feedback that you had.
Yes, it did.
Do you see that as maybe not as you not using it now, is going to detract from that process for the student? Or?
No, because for the student, basically what they liked about it was they would come in, they'd literally hand it in and then move on. Now all that will happen is they'll have had their little card sent to them, they hand it in, move on. Behind the scenes, when we've got downtime, some of my inquiry staff are just inputting it in. I do think though, I think Northampton use barcodes with Hobsons, don't they?
Yeah.
So the other option, if that's something you definitely want to do.
We use it at Cardiff Met.
Oh, right.
We don't use the barcodes, but we've been asked to look into it for ease of registration when they turn up on the day. So it just was interesting to find out whether you're still using it with the system, so what the integration was like and things like that. So.
Yeah.
We still use barcodes, and obviously we do all our registration for Open Day through Connect.
Right.
Yes. But basically the barcodes come back into an Excel spreadsheet, and then the data will go back from an Excel spreadsheet into Connect.
Hobson.
So it's a bit of a cumbersome thing, but that's the way we do it, because we still use the barcodes.
For those of you who are interested in barcoding, it definitely is a UK hot topic, and Chad, who's just at the back there, we're nodding along as we spoke about this very subject just yesterday. Richard Sarnes is actually going to be doing a session later on. He's actually going to be showing you the hardware, and I think what you point to and what Catherine's pointed to is that you do have to create, there is potentially a disjunct between your hardware potentially and your system, but essentially all of the features are there to be able to take out a unique identifier, transpose that elsewhere into a barcode. So there is functionality there, and I think there will be very interesting things to come. We just have to get the correct relationship between the hardware and the software and get it right for our marketplace.
Any more questions there?
Have you integrated your social media channels with this?
We have the feeds coming into the VIP portal page, and that's as much as we've integrated, to be honest. The other thing that we do as well is on any communication that goes out, and I can't remember who I stole this idea from, because I think I'm signed up to Birmingham, Huddersfield, there's a few anyway, and one of them on every communication I send out, it has, sign up to our Facebook, sign up to our Twitter, the link, so we now do that.
We focus more now on our email comms rather than the personalised web page, because we found that we couldn't work out the return rate for people that are logging in, because the reporting doesn't really give you that. And I wondered if you had experienced the same on how you determine if people are repeatedly logging in and looking for new information. It looks like you put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah, to be honest, we're probably still too early days to have done a lot of work on that. And as I say, I think we're doing snapshot data. So on a monthly basis, the team are pulling off reports for me, and that's showing that about half are active. But that's an interesting kind of point. We will go back and look at that. But I agree with you, though. I think for me, it's more the proactive communications that we send out, and whether we then move away from a VIP portal, I don't know. At the moment, it's working for us, but I think the greater benefit is being able to send out top communications.
Two questions, one's quick. The newsletters, are they emails, campaigns, or are they VIP content?
They're email,
right, okay.
Email newsletters.
And the second one is, have you got to the point yet where you are inquiry tracking to application? And have you addressed how you're dealing with duplicates who might have created themselves as inquiries multiple times and then become applicants, and how you're tailoring?
Yeah, we haven't done conversion data yet, but we are doing deduping,
right.
And it happens on a daily basis. And basically, it will throw when that kind of merging happens at 8:30 in the morning, it will throw up a list of suspects,
Yeah.
and basically, Shona McQuillan, who's my inquiry manager, goes through and checks them. It's not a labour-intensive process.
But you haven't matched up with applicant data yet to know if you've got duplicates that way, if they're going to match together.
Well, yeah, no, that happens at the same time.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm David Eckley from the University of Liverpool. I'm just interested in how you get inquiry data into the EMT system. We currently get inquiry data into our system through prospectus requests, open day registrations, school visits and UCAS fairs, etc. Do you input, say, telephone inquiries and online? Do you have an online web form for specific?
We have an online web form. Basically, we've created one web form for, if it's an open day request, if it's a prospectus request, or if they want to sign up for a VIP portal. That automatically goes into the Connect system. We also have the manual inputting, so my inquirers on the phone will kind of go through as they're taking the phone call. And then we have the ability to export data. So I think it was Kate was saying that we have, you'll get the data from, say, UCAS Fair on a, is it CSV file or something like that, and it just imports in.
How big is your inquiry team?
3. Well, it works. Actually, I tell a lie. It's about 3.5 because we have 2 that are job share. We put an extra person in. At the moment, they're coping okay. What I would say that we've recognised is we probably do need some more resources on the web team in terms of the helping Sharon manage the setting up filters for if we want to do different types of communication, because we are doing more and more. I mean, it's like I said, we sent something out to applicants the other week that was an ad hoc. I want to send something out this week that's something else, and she's getting bogged down because obviously she's managing the website as well. So I think we'll have to put another kind of dedicated CRM resource in there, which I think is what Sunderland had done. They had a dedicated manager.
Yeah, Sunderland here.
Oh, right.
I was at the meeting when you actually came up.
Oh, I see.
I was sick, but I do all the lots of campaigns and filters and look after the data in the background.
Yeah.
I think piggybacking back onto what you were just saying, Kate, is dependent on your team and dependent on your input will influence what your output is going to be. And so we were fortunate with BCYou that Catherine would go to the SITS team and say, I want an extra field, and that you have a web person who is also very project manager focused, and we have a project manager and we have Nikki, so on and so forth. But really dependent on what your resource is will influence the outcome.
Oh, absolutely.
And we can work with you to make sure that we create a system that you can set up, but most importantly that you can maintain, and that will be dependent on your type of university and the size of the resources that you've got.
But I would also say, and it came back to what I said at the start, is getting that sponsorship. Taking that dean to Sunderland was one of the best things that I ever did, because he has the ear of the VC. So when 3 months later nothing had happened, I put in a little phone call to him and said, could you just mention it? And it really kind of pushed things forward. So, I wouldn't kind of underestimate the power of champions.
Yeah.
Right, I think we're not going to have time to do a group exercise, but shall we? What I'm going to do then is I'm going to just pose the question to you in terms of, because I want to hear from you as well, is that you've heard about kind of some of the things that we're doing. So, what are the ideas that you've got about improving communications with prospective students, and what perhaps are you doing that's innovative, that adds value? Does anyone want to share some things that they're doing, or any ideas that they've got? We should have had enough time to do the group exercise. Kate, I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell us about what you're doing at Robert Gordon.
Well, at the moment, actually, what we're actually trying to do, we are actually a university who's been a long time user of the Hobsons Connect, who actually underutilise our system, probably due to lack of resource. And so actually what we're doing at the moment is really trying to build a lot more communications into it, because we kind of lost, I guess because of the implementation of AY, because we also use AY, we actually lost the impetus of looking at Connect. And so at the moment, in the last couple of months, what we've been trying to do is build a lot more communications back into the system, because it hadn't been properly looked at for a little while. And things like faculty newsletters is actually something we've introduced. Now, we've just done it tentatively, and so we only have 3, not 18. But that's the kind of thing that, that we are keen to do, so that you get a much more tailored response. And that was my question about whether it was built through content blocks, because I think that could be the way to make it better and to make it feasible to do many more newsletters with less resource. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? It's slightly off topic in terms of this question, so apologies, but we're going through this process at the moment. I'm from the University of Nottingham, because we have a CRM system, but it's not Hobsons. And we're going through a whole review where we've got a champion on the senior management board. One of our issues is with going down the Hobsons route is that it doesn't necessarily have, say, the business engagement side that our business engagement and innovation services want for their private, research contacts and all the rest of it. Does anybody in the room who use Hobsons, do any of you have any interfacing with your business engagement?
Slightly, it's with teachers and advisors, so we've created a separate, it goes into the same system, but it's branded completely different. It's called, our student-facing one is called iHub, and it's iHub Advisor, and it's to run the events and keep in touch with teachers. When we first launched it, we thought they probably didn't really use email and things, but we found them doing more and more. So we've done it for that side, but not for other business relationships. But
we do as well. When we first got, remember way back when we sort of got Connect at Sunderland, we looked at having different interest pages, and we were thinking about having a business one. We were going to have one for schools and colleges, but they never got off the ground. But we do upload data of businesses, and we do run campaigns to invite businesses along to events. And one thing that we did a couple of years ago, when we first had our internship scheme, we got all our online registration through Hobsons. No, we've gone elsewhere. We now get people through social media, but it was very, very useful at the time to get people on board.
Yeah, our challenge at the moment is our current CRM system is probably best in breed for the business engagement, but it's not best in breed for the recruitment side. And so I'm banging lots of heads against
the great thing about Connect is that you can add as many attributes as you like. So even though you've got one flat record, some of that data might relate to a prospective student. Some of that data might relate to an organisation. You just have to make sure that you pick up on the right data when you create your building.
I think the other advantage as well is that you're not paying for user licenses, because we're looking at our business and stakeholders. We like the lady there. We have our teachers and advisors are in Connect, and we had an external supplier that did a newsletter. We've now moved that into Connect and send it monthly. We're looking at all our external relations at the moment. As a short term, I think we're going to use Connect because, like Sunderland, we can use it to invite and manage events, business events, and we can also do the kind of monthly newsletters. I think the worry that we have, and that's something that we're going to go through the process that we went through inquiries in terms of defining what do we actually want to do with our external stakeholders. I'm not clear about how the system will work in identifying the relationships between different post holders at an organisation and who the contacts are. So that's some work that we're going to look at. But I think ultimately it comes down to the conversation I was having with the gentleman here from Wolverhampton. Is systems are set up for different things, and yes, in an ideal world, the pressure is to have one system fits all, but it just doesn't work. The SIT system is a student record system, great at that, or dubiously, but it certainly isn't a CRM. And likewise, Hobsons is a great CRM for prospective students. Whether it can then migrate to others, I don't know. But other systems that I've heard of, which there's an open source one called Civi, CRM, which one of our comms officers who's just come from the commercial sector had used that. So, you know, I wouldn't give up hope. I think just look into it. Sorry, Matt, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, no, just to answer that question, really, I would say that quite interesting what's come out of today's talks is that beyond the physical, as in going to the university or meeting somebody, the web and the prospectus is the kind of the next influential way of choosing your course. So for me, it's about creating very clear lines between your personal profile and course information.
Definitely.
And being able to pull that out and use it and share. I think that kind of sharing, getting something from, you know, so you've got something tangible, and so that your web resources around course information can be built with Hobsons in mind, so the kind of the journey between the two makes sense, and that when you walk around with one of these or whatever your other device might be, you've got something again to show and share. Because again, I like the softer communication between families. It won't be just about building something for parents. It'll be about just going, have a look at this. What do you think? Because the parents, are going to get younger. I'm one, and we're doing this, and we'll hopefully be going through that and be a bit more fun.
I think just on the old prospectus debate, it's interesting because we moved away from a traditional prospectus. We've gone from one extreme to the other. At one point, sort of 3 years ago, we had 13 subject prospectuses, which went down very well, but then the clear indications for the market, we do a lot of market, unfortunately I've got a good market research team, were suggesting that no, they didn't want a prospectus, they wanted more a brief guide about the university, and they were happy to go online. So we moved completely away from a prospectus. We had what we call our essential guide. And then we noticed in the last 12 months a massive drop-off in requests for the essential guide. It was something like 40% down. Still getting all the inquiries through. And I sort of thought, we need to really look into this. I'm slightly concerned. And there were two things that came. So we surveyed people. People were very positive about the essential guide, thought the content was great, but 40% said they weren't prepared to go online to look at course information. Well, 40% is quite a staggering figure, really, and in a higher fee regime. So we've now reversed it. We're now producing a prospectus that will be printed in the next sort of month or so. But all the indication, all the research out there suggests that they want that, and they want all the electronic communications as well. And I don't know if any of you have any dealings with a consultancy called Education Marketing Consultants, but they do a series of research papers called eVision. And the last one was on postgraduate students. And what was really interesting, as well as the obvious that they want face-to-face contact, they really want email communications, which I have to say I was quite surprised at in a way. And that's led to a complete shift in the way we're looking at our postgraduate marketing. We already do things like virtual chats, but we're looking at now a real bespoke comms plan for postgraduate students through Connect as well. Any final comments or questions? Okay, well, obviously my email was on the presentation. I'm happy if anyone wants to get in touch with me or grab me at lunch or get in touch with me after today. I'm more than happy to kind of share advice, tips, and and I'm open to ideas. So if you think you're doing something really good, let me know and I'll pinch it.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you.